200.
On floor.
Hi, Ma'am Rosel. Can we check your PowerPoint presentation?
I see. I'll share my screen. And ito, only the host siguro who can share. Paano ba to? Who can start sharing? Start. Kita ba, ma'am?
Yeah, that's good, ma'am. Sige po.
Okay.
We're actually live on Facebook now.
Okay.
We'll start at exactly 1 o'clock. Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues and partners in cybersecurity. Again, let me greet everyone a happy National Cybersecurity Month for those who are just who is first who are here for the first time attending the Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference. We just like to share that October is our National Cybersecurity Month. And it's our day 3 of the Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference 2021. As you may have already be aware of, we are holding the PICC 2021 in 4 parts. We had our first part last October 13, where we tackled the protection of governments and military networks. We also talked about addressing risk and seizing opportunities in cyberspace, the government's role, where we had experts from the US, Australia, Israel, the National Cybersecurity Interagency Committee, or NSHAC, and the DICT Cybersecurity Bureau. We had them examined and deliberated on the government's role in cybersecurity, as well as sharing best practices in the field. And day 1 was capped off with a comprehensive presentation on certs and the protection of a nation's assets by an expert from APNIC. And day 2 was held exactly a week ago. That was last Wednesday, October 27. And on that, October 20, I mean. And on that day, we talked about the protection of our critical information infrastructures, or what we call the CIIs. In the Philippines, we have 12 CIIs. And we had a lively discussion on managing cybersecurity for industrial control system, which is very rare to be talked about in the Philippines, with our experts from the Industrial Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Japan, somebody also, a representative from USA Beacon, a representative from Meralco, and the National Security Council. Then we also had a speaker talk about the lessons that we had from the recent attacks on CIIs. If you have missed any of this, you may check the DICT Cybersecurity Facebook page for the recorded sessions. So that is, you can just search for DICT Cybersecurity on Facebook, and you would find our page, and you may look for the recorded sessions in our page. And by the way, we are live right now via Zoom and also via our official Facebook page and the DICT Cybersecurity page of all our regional clusters. And also the DICT main page. So if you have friends who you would want to invite, you can just share our pages so that they can also watch our session for today. But before we proceed with the highlights of today, let us pause for a few minutes for the invocation and the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم آمين يا رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم اجمع شمل المسلمين والكريستيان والأمم في مدينة دباو، وسلم دائما مجتمعنا هذا بالسلم والأمن والتقدم في بلدنا هذا، آمين يا رب العالمين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين يا رب العالمين.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today to praise and worship you and give you thanks for all the things you continue to provide for ourselves and our families. Father, we humbly ask for forgiveness for all the times we have offended you, when we forget to acknowledge your presence in the image of our brothers and sisters, and for moments we fail to be good stewards of the blessings you have given us. Continue to guide and protect each one of us, Lord, that we may always walk in the light of your everlasting love and mercy. Grant us, Father, with your comfort in times of distress and with your strength in times of weakness. Bestow upon us your unending grace and healing, that we may in turn become instruments of gentleness and compassion to others. We ask all this in the name of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, with the prayer and the intercession of our Blessed Mother. Amen.
Once again, welcome to the Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference 2021. This is the DICT Cybersecurity Bureau's main event in celebration of the National Cybersecurity Month. And we are already on our day 3. And day 4 would be this Friday. Hindi po next week ha. It would be this Friday, October 29. And we will be posting the link to the registration for the session on Friday right after our program today. So this Friday, we would be talking about the protection of individuals. So what are the things that you would expect this Friday? We have a panel discussion on cybersecurity and education, bridging the industry gap. This is very interesting, and we have invited an associate professor in cybersecurity from the University of Canberra. We also have somebody from De La Salle University who is also a part of the technical working group for TESDA, and somebody from Ateneo de Davao University, and also somebody from the DICT Cybersecurity Bureau. So this is going to be a very exciting discussion on education and cybersecurity, because as we know, we have a lot of cybersecurity experts in the country, and this is something that we have to work on so that we could attain cyber resiliency, and so that also we could provide the needed cybersecurity experts for our industry. And after the panel discussion, we would also have somebody from the National Center of Incident Readiness and Strategy for Cybersecurity, or NISC, from Japan, to talk about securing online life, the important role of cybersecurity awareness. So this is the time for all those, for our partners, especially those who are in the business, in the academe, and in the business of doing awareness campaigns for cybersecurity. So for cybersecurity advocates, our day would be on Friday. So please do register, and abangan niyo po ang aming promotion for this Friday's part of the conference. Okay, so for today, we are actually going to be focusing on the protection of business and supply chain. Why is this important? Okay, so the focus of our conference today is, of course, protection of business and supply chain. And we have highlighted the importance of protecting our government and military networks and our CIIs in the past 2 parts of this conference. And as of equal importance is protecting business and supply chain. Pare-pareho po yan importante. And we really cannot overemphasize the importance of cybersecurity in our time. It is an unfortunate truth that cyber attacks and cyber crimes are growing rapidly in numbers and in sophistication. Sabi nga ng mga leaders, cyber criminals are working at the speed of light, while we at the law enforcement or in the government are working at the speed of law. But no matter how unfortunate it is still the truth, and we have to live with it. In the first half of 2020, and we had at the last part of 2020, it was a turning point for cybersecurity. Actually, from a steady pace in digitization, the country was forced to rely mainly on ICTs at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in order to survive, businesses had to explore online platforms. Students and teachers were also left with no choice but to go online to continue education. And even work had to shift to remote arrangements. And admittedly, our digital economy is also growing. And this clearly created a bigger opportunity for cyber actors to play their attacks, to play their games. And the result was a visible increase in massive attacks, ranging from simple phishing to sophisticated supply chain attacks. And even the FBI reported that since the start of the coronavirus, cyber attacks have increased by 300%. That's a lot. And the US Federal Trade Commission also reported receiving around 1.4 million reports of identity theft last year, double the number from 2019. And this trend was also highlighted by Google, as it revealed that it blocked over 18 million phishing attempts each day at the start of the pandemic. Imagine, these are only the phishing attempts that they have blocked. Imagine those that were not able to be detected. And before the 2020 ended, the cybersecurity community was caught unaware with the SolarWinds attack. This was an attack that was carried out through malicious updates to the company's network monitoring product called Orion. And the incident highlights the severe impact that supply chain attacks can have, and the sad truth that most organizations, either governments or private, are agonizingly unprepared to prevent and detect such threats. And the bad news is, experts say that supply chain attacks are now expected to multiply by 4 in 2021. And that is bad news for us, especially in the government. And the burden is with governments, policymakers, and the cybersecurity community, the whole cybersecurity community, to act now so we could mitigate their impact. So our panel discussion for today will actually highlight how a unified cybersecurity standards would be a major move to address such risks, especially the risk in supply chain attacks. And it is actually one of the moves of one of the projects of the Department of Information and Communications Technology Cybersecurity Bureau to adopt a unified cybersecurity standard so that all the ICT equipments that are coming into the country would be certified and would follow certain standards so that we would know that somehow we are protected, that the ICT equipment that we use are actually not used by cyber criminals or cyber actors to actually attack our networks. So I think, are we ready to, is everyone ready now for our panel discussion? Our panel discussion is entitled Unified Cybersecurity Standards, Reducing the Risk in the Supply Chain. Okay, but before I turn over the session to our moderator, let me have the privilege to introduce him first. So moderating our panel discussion is an ASEAN engineer. He is also a professional electronics engineer and a graduate of Masters of Science in Global Information and Telecommunication Studies at the Waseda University in Tokyo, Japan. He was instrumental in the passage of the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, as he was part of the technical working group and a recipient of various local and international awards in the field of electronics engineering, information and communications technology, law enforcement, and cybersecurity. He is a contributor in the books Law, Policy, and Technology, Cyberterrorism, Information Warfare, and Internet Immobilization, as well as the Cyber Warfare, a review of theories, law, policies, actual incidents, and the dilemma of anonymity in European Journal of Law and Technology, which were published in the US. He was an assistant secretary for the cybersecurity and enabling technologies of the DICT, and his service is actually a landmark in Philippine history because he was part of the first to have served the DICT or this government agency. He is currently a highly technical consultant for the Department of Information and Communications Technology, Cybersecurity Bureau, and he is also the founder and CEO of Cyber Guardians Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to turn you over now to Engineer Alan S. Cabanlong.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, the ICT Cybersecurity Bureau, for having me here. I was voluntold by Fleur to moderate. Anyways, this is our advocacy as part of the National Cybersecurity Plan of 2022 that I authored. The third key imperative is the protection of businesses and supply chain. So the entry of new technologies to the Philippine market, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, fifth generation mobile, has created concerns about implementing cybersecurity in data protection for the Filipino people. On the other hand, critical information infrastructure sectors have been a target of many cyber threats. In recent years, several breaches were reported, including that of a Filipino pawn shop leaking 900,000 sensitive clients' personal information. One of the country's major media outlets was forced to close 2 sites due to a card data breach. APT campaign was found to have been targeting businesses around Southeast Asia. Ransomware incidents attacking an insurance company, and a data breach concerning a Filipino credit application, to name a few. When not prevented or left undetected, this threats could be devastating and could cripple the political, economic, social, and technological stability of our country. So in 2016, the Department of ICT launched the National Cybersecurity Plan of 2022, the first national cybersecurity strategy of the Philippines, which defines the 4 key imperatives of the plan, namely the protection of critical information infrastructure, protection of government and military networks, protection of businesses and supply chain, and finally, protection of individuals. The NCSP 2022 has explicitly expressed the need to adopt cybersecurity standards in information technology and operational technology and in the protection of the supply chain to protect the Filipino people. This is also meant to set structured methodologies and provide reliable data that save time in the innovation process. But where are we now in the adoption of cybersecurity standards? A cybersecurity standard is a technical reference document created and consented by a group of experts in an internationally recognized organization, such as, but not limited to, the ITU, the IEEE, the GSMA, the 3GPP. The said standard is designed to be used as guidelines, rules, or reference by regulators, manufacturers, to ensure uniformity to certain practices within the cybersecurity industry. While the NTC imposes strict measures and ensures compliance of telcos for better services and connectivity, it does not directly tackle the security component. Thus, there is a need to strengthen policies on cybersecurity, especially in the adoption of related equipment security standards for testing and validation. One good example is the reference standard set by ITU, the ITU IMD 2020 5G technical standard, which 3GPP 5G became the officially adopted technical standard on July 10 of 2020. So one could ask, are local telcos following or adopting specific cybersecurity standards? Major telco players in the country use network equipment that follows globally accepted security equipment testing and validation standards. However, ensuring compliance with standards requires consistent and robust enforcement from the government. This is the gap that needs to be addressed. The National Telecommunications Commission and the DICT should adopt cybersecurity standards where it is voluntary, but the adoption should be vocal. The positive effect of standardization is that it can help weed out incompatible and unsecure technologies in the market that slow down the growth of technology. From the government's perspective, having standards in place also means streamlining both internal and external processes. So in the 5G technology era, the GSMA and 3GPP have initiated specific testing and validation standards for mobile network equipment, the Network Equipment Security Assurance Scheme, or the NISAS. NISAS provides security baselines for network equipment that have been developed according to standard guidelines for the mobile communications industry. In this scheme, GSMA defines NISAS methodology, while 3GPP defines the security assurance specification, which provides test cases for the security evaluation of network equipment. Adopting such standard like NISAS would assure the public that any operators who use network equipment following similar scheme are safe to use, taking out cyber threats methods, thus protecting the cybersecurity and data privacy of the Filipino people. So we are glad today that Mr. David Turkington, the head of technology of Asia Pacific region of GSMA, and also Mr. Benedict de Borja, the management system auditor and trainer of SGS, and our friend Ms. Roselle Rage, the vice chair of the DTI BPS TC60 on IT. They're here to discuss with us as panelists the need to adopt a unified cybersecurity standards so that we can reduce risk in the supply chain. Mr. David Turkington has worked in mobile networks engineering for 35 years. His experience includes standards, rollout and optimization, networking and security, analytics, and machine learning. He began his career at the Mobile Systems Division of the British Telecom Research Laboratories in Martlesham Heath, UK, and worked in the UK, US, and Hong Kong, and around Asia. At GSMA, he is responsible for coordinating various mobile industry technologies initiatives, including 5G, security, AI, and IoT in the APAC region. David is a member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology and a chartered engineer. Mr. Benedict de Borja, or Ben, is an information security management system expert, helping organizations build their information security management system or establish data privacy procedures and practices. Through training and auditing, he assists organizations achieve compliance requirements for globally accepted security standards or relevant data privacy laws, such as ISO 27001, ISO 20000, the Data Privacy Act, GDPR, and etc. And Ms. Roselle Raig is a product of UST with a degree in business administration. She also took up postgraduate course from the same university and recently graduated from her master's in education at WCC. She is also taking up her PhD at Colegio de Dagupan. Ms. Raig is the founding president of Global Knowledge PH Incorporated, a global IT training private company which has been running for almost 80 years. The said company offers cybersecurity, IT security, and other IT courses, including international certification. She's also the founder and president of a new academic institution, GK College of Business, Arts, and Technology, which started its operation in August of 2018. Ms. Raig, is currently the vice chair for DTI BPS TC60 on information technology, a position she has been elected for 2 terms now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our 3 esteemed panelists, David, Ben, and Roselle. Good afternoon, panelists.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I'll give you a minimum of 5 minutes and a maximum of 15 minutes each to present. And then, well, you're not required to have or to present any PowerPoint, but if you have, then please do. The host will activate the screen sharing. So yes, let's start from David. David, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan, for your introduction. I'll just tell a little bit more about GSMA and NESIS in particular. Maybe if I just share my my screen, or rather one app, this one. Sorry, let me, where's the share button? There we go. This is really the GSMA website, and we have a subsection on security, as you can see. And we have a very comprehensive documentation for NESIS, but that's only one sort of aspect of security and telecoms. If I just quickly show, we have the GSMA TISSC, which, sorry, let me show you what that stands for. Sorry, I'm lost on the different. It's anyways the information sharing and analysis center. So, for example, if there's threats that are common or could be common to all operators, you can report them, or you can report known bugs or faults or security issues in the equipment. These get uploaded to the database and anonymized and shared among the operators of the world to make sure that they can, learn from these problems that other member operators can have. So, for example, it could be a particular type of equipment which is not common to everyone. So, for example, a particular vendor has a problem with something, and then that is shared among all the operators, but it's really only of interest to the operators operating that same type of equipment. But you can see here there's quite a lot of documentation and how to join. So all that information is online in our website. NESIS was mentioned as well. If you go to NESIS, in addition to the documentation, we have lots of questions, frequently asked questions. We have a comprehensive document repository. So you can see this is the different documentation for operating NESIS, the overviews, NESIS for the laboratories who do the testing, and so on. So this is a quite comprehensive system. But again, NESIS is sort of confined to equipment vendors. But this is sort of, again, under consideration, because if you come down here, who participates, and then later on, does NESIS cover and secure the entire supply chain, in the frequently asked questions? And at the moment, the answer is it only refers to equipment, but there is effort underway to expand the remit to take in more, the scope to take in more sort of wider range of sort of things that are important to security. But so again, I would encourage people to take a look at the documentation here for NESIS. We have more about 5G, as you mentioned. The security accreditation scheme, this is actually different than NESIS. This is to do with the securing the SIM card, the device inside your mobile that basically identifies you uniquely to the network. Again, that's a highly important thing because this avoids fraud on your account and secures your device. We have the cybersecurity knowledge base. Again, this will be other types of information that will be relevant to all sorts of operators and mostly mobile operators, of course, but all sorts of operators operating different technology and connecting to the technology system. The security algorithms is very deeply technical, and that's involved with how the encryption is done. So that's probably a very limited use to most people. But here's one, again, this is probably the most interesting for everyone, and it's the device security advice for mobile device operators. How to avoid your device being stolen, spam, and what to do about it, malware in downloaded in phones, and how to secure voicemail services, because this was a big issue a while back in the UK. So you can see we've got quite a comprehensive list of activities. And just one last thing, or two last things, supply chain toolbox. I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but it's got a lot of documentation about procurement, design and development, building the network, and operating the network and decommissioning the network. These are all key elements in operating a network, specifically mobile networks in this case, but this is something you could be maybe use for other types of applications. And the last thing is fraud and security services. This is something we add on top of, as memberships, like databases of fraudulent numbers and the IME database. This is a list of stolen devices and so on. So these are the things that GSMA gets up to, and we can talk about this shortly. So I'll hand it back to you, Alan, and I'll just stop sharing there. And are you on mute, Alan? Oh, maybe we've lost Alan. So maybe if I pass to Benedict, and you can give your little intro.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for passing it on to me. So let me share my screen. Okay. There. All right.
Yes.
So, all right. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
All right. So let me introduce myself. My name is Benedict Borja, and I'm a trainer for information security ISO standards from SGS Philippines. And I'm also a lead auditor for ISO 27001. That is the ISO standard for information security management system. So aligned with the theme today, I'd like to talk a bit more about the standards that most people would be associating with or most familiar with in terms of information security. So this would be some specific ISO standards and some other related standards or frameworks that also address information security and cybersecurity. Okay. So let me start off with a case study of a recent attack on one supply chain company, okay, or a part of a supply chain, okay, and this is the attack on Kaseya, okay. So Kaseya is a virtual system administrator software, and it's used to manage and monitor customer infrastructure, okay. So essentially, an attack happened on Kaseya, the company. This was a ransomware attack by a ransomware gang known as Reveal, or also known as Sodinokibi. Okay. Now, essentially, they were able to access Kaseya's systems. They were able to breach their data centers and encrypt some of the vital information that was there. Okay. And essentially held it hostage. Okay. So as the name implies, it is ransomware. Okay. Now, Kaseya VSA is commonly used by managed service providers or MSPs in the US and the UK to help them manage their clients' system. So as such, what happened is this ransomware attack compromised this product and also enabled the ransomware operators to gain privileged access to thousands of MSP customer devices, given the high level of trust that IT monitoring software usually requires. Okay. So I won't get into the details of how the attack happened or what the current status of this incident is at the moment. Okay, although I last I read it was resolved naman to some extent. Okay, which is good to know. But since our topic is regarding cybersecurity standards or information security standards, I'd like to take off from this particular case study. Okay, so what standards were actually in place in Kaseya when this incident happened? So first and foremost, their data centers were actually certified in Information Security Management System, or ISO 27001. They also were certified in Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as HIPAA, because they also had customer information that was health information. So that should be covered by the security standard of HIPAA. They also had, as you have read in the case study, they also had clients that were based in the UK. So they also needed to be compliant with the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which is basically the data privacy law in the European Union, which includes the UK. And as a US company, they also needed to be compliant with the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA. Okay. And finally, they also were certified in system and organization controls. Okay. So this is another standard that they certified for. So essentially, they had 5 different separate information security or data privacy certifications or compliances in place. And yet, they still fell victim to a ransomware attack. So what's the point that I'm trying to make? Essentially, as much as we would like to see a unified or a common cybersecurity or information security standard or framework or set of guidelines, there's no one size fits all. We have to always consider the nuances of each and every organization. What would be the applicable legal, regulatory, or statutory requirements that are imposed upon them in the territory that they operate in, or any other territories that they find themselves to be operating in, or if the data or information they are managing or under their control would be subject to laws and regulations from the original point where the territory, the original point where that information or data came from. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, there are existing standards, frameworks, and guidelines. And just to mention a few, we have NIST, we have HIPAA, which the Kaseya case was compliant or was certified for. There's also the credit card or debit card standard called PCI DSS. Okay. Then we also have COVID-5, which is one of the more popular frameworks or methods or approaches for implementing information security. Of course, as mentioned, the Kaseya company also was compliant with SOC, which is under the AICPA. And finally, the most popularly known standard, which are the ISO standards. So there are actually a lot of flavors to choose from, so to speak, when it comes to standards, frameworks, and guidelines of how to put information security or cybersecurity in your organization. Okay, now, standards currently in use, I'll concentrate more on the ISO standards. We have ISO 20000, which is IT service management, ISO 22301, which is business continuity management, ISO 27001, which is your information security management, ISO 27017. This is a fairly new standard. This is information security controls for cloud services. Then we have ISO 27018, the protection of personally identifiable information in public clouds. And again, a recently launched standard which only came out in 2019, I believe, just before the pandemic, ISO 27701, which is a privacy information management system. So this is now the new ISO standard for data privacy. Okay, it borrows or references the 27001 as its foundation, but the controls that you will employ are more specific or more attuned to protecting personal information or personal data. Okay. Now, sometimes you have other compliance requirements. So as mentioned in the Kaseya case, sometimes you need to have a data privacy compliance for the personal data that is under your control. In their case, they needed to comply with the GDPR, okay, because they were handling clients based in the UK or the European Union. And as per our topic today, there are also independent third-party supply chain audits. Now, those standards I mentioned that are currently in use, what exactly do they address in terms of risk to information security and to supply chain management? So for each of those standards, they would normally address these risk areas. So they can either be addressing risk to security in the cloud, information security in general or as a whole, data privacy, the protection of personal data or personal information. And in some cases, some of these standards also address the availability of that data or information. So as you can see also in this chart, every so often, you might need to undergo a GDPR assessment for data privacy. And as mentioned, supply chain audits, wherein you also need to see the security of the data or information in the cloud, information security as a whole or in general that is practiced by the organization, and protection of personal information or personal data. Okay. Now, the ISO organization is actually very active over the time that we have been under the pandemic. They are currently reviewing the current standards that they have in place and trying to see how it can be made better to address what we experienced over the past 2 years. So some of the standards under development or review is ISO 28000, which is the specifications for security management systems for the supply chain. Okay. Then ISO 27036, which is cybersecurity for supplier relationships. And of course, the ISO standard for, which gives us the guidelines for cybersecurity, we have ISO 27032. Okay. They are currently reviewing the ISO standard for risk management in information security, which is 27005. And they are attempting to consolidate information security, cybersecurity, and privacy protection under one risk management approach. And that would fall under the ISO 27005 standard. And there was also another one under development review, ISO 27400, which is cybersecurity for the Internet of Things and privacy. Okay. Now, since we're talking about supply chain, cybersecurity experts recommend the following to prevent cyber attacks in the supply chain. Try to limit the number of suppliers you use. It's a lot easier to manage a few outside parties instead of many. Develop a minimum cyber standard for suppliers. Put the cyber standard that you want your suppliers to adhere to in your contract. Okay. Check your suppliers if they are following the standards. Share information on how to improve, and finally, encourage open reporting. Okay. Nobody wants to be the victim of an attack. Nobody wants to experience a breach. But one of the, abiding tenets in information security, it's not a matter of if you will have an incident or if you will be breached. It's a matter of when. So the ISO standards actually assume that it's only but just a matter of time that you will experience an incident or breach. What the standard is asking you to do is to try and recover from it and learn from it. So that is why we encourage open reporting. Okay. So in closing, the things to consider, you have to know which standards allow your organization to cover as many risks as possible in your supply chain. Which standards are practiced by your industry, the industry that your company belongs to, and which standards can help your organization comply with legal, regulatory, or statutory requirements. And this is just your starting point, and we can take it from there. We are always open to continual improvement. So with that, thank you very much for the time. Back to you, Sir Alan.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, David. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. The questions will be given later after Ms. Roselle speaks. Your floor, Ms. Roselle.
Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen. Excuse me, can I request for assistance for the sharing of the screen? Here. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roselle Ray. I'm the president of Global Knowledge Philippines and also the vice chair for BPS DTI TC60 or Technical Committee 60 on Information Technology. Now, what do we do at TC60? Information technology. First, we review various ISO standards for possible adoption in the Philippine setting. So ito po yung kagaya ng minention kanina ng other speaker. There are standards that he mentioned, and those standards to be adopted in the Philippines were first reviewed by the TC60 and the subcommittees for it to be adopted in the Philippine setting. At TC60, we have 3 subcommittees, which one of which is the Subcommittee 1 on IT security or cybersecurity, which ASEC Alan Cabanlong was previously the chair, which I also was the vice chair for 3 years. That was the last term. And this SC1 is now being chaired by Director JC Caloy Reyes. The standards for review are planned out every first quarter of the year, and the committees would meet once a month for discussion, deliberation, and for the approval and recommendation for the adoption of ISO standards. Now, what do I do as the president of Global Knowledge Philippines, Inc.? It is a training center, a training company which started in 2003. And primarily, we were offering cybersecurity training and certification as early as 2003. But it was not called cybersecurity then. It was called either IT or computer security, network security, admin security. But the term cybersecurity was just coined quite recently. So CEH, or Certified Ethical Hacking, Certified Hacking Forensics Investigation, the NCASE Forensics, these are the courses and the certifications that we offer even as early as 2003, 2005 with our partner vendors like Easy Counsel, Compia, IBM, and the likes. So we've been in the industry. We've been in the training industry for the past 18 years. And this would mean that as early as 18 years ago, we were already campaigning and advocating for security. During that time, I could remember that the most famous or the more famous certifications would be the likes of MCSE of Microsoft, or the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, the CCNP, if some of you could relate. So, but at Global Knowledge, we were very passionate in promoting security. But eventually, we know that time will come that security will be a very in-demand subject in the future. And that future is today. So that future has been around for, we know that everyone is connected to the internet, including young kids, including the teens, the corporate people, and everyone is connected to the internet. And therefore, the need for cybersecurity experts is really on the rise. Now, today's topic is Unified Cybersecurity Standards, Reducing Risks in the Supply Chain. So let's dissect the title, or let's dissect the subject. There are 2 major topics here: the Unified Cybersecurity Standards, and the other one is reducing risk in the supply chain. So first, let's discuss the pros of having unified cybersecurity standards. So having unified standards would increase the attack resistance of networks. Unified standards mitigate the effects of an attack. They can increase the overall performance of a network, enhance coordination between or among networks. The number of attacks will decrease, and coordination will be guarded. Now, however, there are also some cons, and these would be the additional expenses for those facilities that implement their own standards. Definitely, they'll be spending more. The options for providers can be limited. Unified standards are still vulnerable. Let's take note of this. There's no 100% secured or 100% very strong system. They're still vulnerable. The transition period can cause additional pressure on companies. Standards are not unbreakable, and major data leak is still possible, as discussed by the previous speaker. So reducing risk in the supply chain, we have to identify first the supply chain risks. For us to understand, how do we reduce the risk? First, let's understand what are the risks involved. There are 2 risk, unpredictable or misunderstood supplier facilities condition and compliance issues, and the stability and management of supplier businesses. Now, the internal risk, on the other hand, would be the lack of contingency planning, the disruptions in internal manufacturing operations, changes in key personnel, the ineffective management, and cybersecurity breaches. Now, how do we mitigate the supply chain risk? First, we have to undertake a business impact analysis. Gaano ba? What are the impacts of if, for example, you'll be breached? How much and what would be the risk involved? Now, assess and monitor the new and existing suppliers, reduce concentration of supply, work with your suppliers, and proactively address supply chain cyber threats. Now, it's said by Deloitte, your supply chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And similarly, by Daniel Kahn of Kahn Consulting, companies must ensure that any supply chain vendors have security policies and procedures that are codified, validated, and certified. Now, in some, let me go back to this. Future recommendations, we ensure that standards are suitable for targeted industry facilities, provide education and workshops about these standards and the necessary IT skills to implement it. We also have to develop ethical rules that will apply to sensitive data, consult stakeholders about standards, hire cybersecurity professionals, and assess previous data leaks. The established standards need to align with the facility's demands. Additional workshops on cybersecurity will be helpful as well. Ethical rules that will apply to all staff who works with data are necessary. IT skills of employees have to be additionally assessed. In summary, failure to predict failure to predict and reduce the risk of supply chain affect your product availability, revenue generation, and even cause complete production halts. Identifying potential areas of supply chain risk and taking positive steps to reduce your exposure will help your business to service its customer and fulfill its potential. Again, my name is Rosel Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosel, for that wonderful presentation. Nakalimutan ko, magkasama pala tayo sa 60 dati.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Vice Chair mo po ako.
Yeah, Rosel. And anyways, I would like to ask David the first question. David, are you there?
Yes, indeed. I must apologize. I have a renovation going on in my building, which I'm sure you've all experienced recently. So can't get away from it. So I'll mute when I'm not talking.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you, David. David, how do we deal with the cybersecurity risk of rapidly developing new technologies? You know, as you've mentioned, we are stepping into the 5G era. What are the recommendations for 5G security strategies?
That's a good question. It's about knowing the unknowns or finding out about the unknowns as fast as you can and faster than the hackers and the people who will try to take advantage of these things. GSMA, we have our 5G vulnerability disclosure program, and again, that's for operators that are rolling out 5G. They might find some problem. It's not necessarily a security issue, but something doesn't work properly according to the standards, and so they try to highlight that, and then they can either report it anonymously or with describing the process and reproduce it, and then we can forward this to the appropriate vendor or so on, and then try to get it addressed in say a code update or so on. So that's what happens in 5G. In addition, there's the cloud stuff, because a lot of 5G is using cloud, and so we rely on expertise in the domains of ICT that weren't traditionally telecoms, based. So we're relying on the new ICT expertise and security to take control of that.
So what would be the major benefits of a unified cybersecurity standard, such as the NISAs that GSMA is introducing, in managing cybersecurity risk? What are the major benefits?
Some of the major benefits are it's only a baseline of security. So if an operator wants additional security for some particular application, then they can request that over and above NISAs. But NISA sort of verifies that the code, for example, that has been compiled into the system has followed certain standard security principles, like the libraries come from and the versions are all up to date and so on. And so it's basic things like this, but if you don't request them, then they don't necessarily make it into your product. So, but the advantage is that once the vendor has complied with these regulations or the assurance scheme and got certified, that means that they can say that we have tested our software, we have tested our hardware, it complies to this basic standards, and we can hold our piece of paper, our certificate, to prove this. And what that means is then they can go, whenever they sell the same equipment in different markets, they have the same basic standards of compliance. And what we hope as GSMA is this becomes a sort of request from both operators that are issuing RFPs and governments perhaps that are specifying this so that it's a basic standard.
Yeah, thank you, David, for that response. I would like to ask Mr. Sell. Mr. Sell, NISA standard has been widely supported in 5G cybersecurity management, including regulators, operators, auditors, and vendors. So what would be the best way for Philippines to integrate the standard locally as part of the TC60, of course?
Hi, sir. Okay. First, we have to check with all the stakeholders for the implementation. Study and assess first the situation and who would be the stakeholders. We have to identify that. And after that, we have to lay down all the necessary or all the recommended standards to be in place. After that,
hello, Mr. Seth, are you there?
Maybe if I just come in,
yes,
Roselle mentioned one thing in her presentation about these standards, and I think it's actually very, very important or overlooked, and it's the skill, the body of skill, the people who know about this. If you have a standard, there's going to be more people know about it, and so your workforce is going to be larger. And I think this is a key, a key point to make, that having a standard that's well known will mean there's going to be more people know it.
And standards are vetted by experts, right?
Yes.
Are vetted by technical experts, technical people globally, and are also vetted with a reference standard that is also proposed by international organizations, right, David?
Yes, about that. I'll hand over to Roselle again, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so as mentioned, actually I came from the field of training and certification, and one very important in implementing anything is first and foremost to have the training in place, training and certification in particular in place, because in most companies, what we do is we have all the infrastructures in place, everything, all the planning, but the training is, even in budget, the training goes at the end, when in fact, it should be at the very forefront of everything. Because even if you have the most sophisticated, even if you have the best implementation of infrastructures of these standards, if the staff, if the stakeholders are not trained, are not well equipped on how to handle this, then it might fail, and it's doomed to fail most of the time.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ms. Roselle. But when speaking of standards, we are reviewing standards in TC60, right? So
yes.
that we can adopt it locally. So what would be the best way, to integrate the standard in the Philippines? For example, yes, you mentioned the stakeholders' importance in the adoption of standards, but what do you think? Who do you think is the best agency to vet for a specific cybersecurity standard?
In my opinion, it should be the DICT. In our situation right now, the DICT should be in charge and should be in the forefront of running all these implementation, planning, and everything for cybersecurity. So that's how we see it. Well, of course, with the help of other government agencies like NPC and also the PNP and NBI. So, but I think the foremost government agency who should be on the spearhead of this, or who should spearhead this, would be the DICT.
Okay, so right now in the PT60, have we adopted any InfoSec standards yet in the Philippines?
Oh, we have adopted a lot, and we have a nice report card for everyone, because all the cybersecurity standards, we have, I think, about 60 of the planned cybersecurity and also IT standards have been in place and adopted in the Philippines setting.
Yeah, we know that standards are voluntary. It's not mandatory.
Not
but,
yet.
Not
I
yet
don't know,
mandatory.
in the future.
Not yet mandatory. But when we adopt standards, I believe we have to consider the importance or the security measures that it contributes to the Filipino nation. Anyways, I'd like to go to Benedict. Mr. Ben?
Yes, sir.
Ben, in the context of driving digital information transformation globally, what are the biggest cybersecurity challenges and needs post-pandemic in the Philippines?
Okay. That's a very good question. Okay. Over the past 2 years, when we've had the pandemic, I've been seeing a lot of things happening to the local companies, happening to my own clients. Okay. And one of the major things that happened, a lot of us were pushed to work from not our usual locations. We are working from home, we're working from a shared site, we are working from a backup site, and so on and so forth. And without naming names or identifying certain companies, okay, everybody was just caught off guard. Okay, everybody was just caught off guard. Okay.
Yeah. That's right.
So, and I don't think it just happened to us. I think it's happened even to more advanced countries, like the Western countries. They have better technology in place. They have better procedures and practices, and they were also caught off guard.
Correct.
So,
go
ahead.
Yeah. So ISO 27001 series has been an important international standard, on managing InfoSec. So, what are the lessons that we can draw from it in managing future cybersecurity risk? So let's what are the lessons that we can draw?
One of the most common lessons that I keep repeating, especially to my clients, the standard will only be as good as the practitioner. Okay, so it's not simply a matter of waking up one day, deciding to learn the standard, sending people over to train in it, then expecting them to come back and just re-echo everything to everybody else in the organization. Then one day you suddenly decide, we're going to get certified. Okay. And sometimes, or no, not, let me rephrase that. A lot of times, the time that they get the training and they target themselves for certification is so close to one another. Okay. So like, I've even had a client who got their people trained for the standard this month, and they want to be certified 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
That is too short.
Exactly.
That's too short. Okay, so it's no better than a paper exercise. So if you sincerely want this to become a culture in your company, invest the time, invest the effort.
Yes. So I think the government should also adopt standards.
Yes.
Because,
I wholeheartedly agree.
As frontliners, government are frontliners. Agencies are frontliners. So, some government agencies have standards, like ISO 9000 series.
Yes.
But InfoSec standard is also very important. So to strengthen one's cyber resilience, Ben, and cybersecurity, what are some of the key measures and standards that should be adopted based on your experience?
So the starting point will always be 27001 because it just gives you a good foundation. Okay. And then that standard itself is asking you to look inside your organization and ask the question, what is the context of your organization? To put it simply, what exactly does your organization do? Like, what's its place in society? What does it offer to the community? Does it have to follow any rules or regulation by law or anything like that? If you have a solid understanding of what your organization does, you can take the next step. What are the things aside from the foundation standard that you also need to adopt? Do you need cryptography? Okay. Do you need to enhance your data privacy because you handle a lot of personal data or personal information? Are you a technology provider? Are you a telco company? Okay, so you also need to adopt the telco standards for information security and cybersecurity. And, aligned with our topic today, are you part of another company's supply chain?
Yes, that's correct.
So that means you would also be subject to third-party audits for suppliers. You should have a supplier or vendor arrangement with the company that you provide your services or your goods for. And in doing that, like mentioned by the other speakers, everything is already digital.
Yes.
Okay. Even our own names are digitized, and therefore we need to create a law just to protect its privacy.
And this manufacturer should adopt a network, an equipment security standard for that matter.
Correct.
Because they're the supply chain. So once they will be attacked, then of course the endpoints, will also be attacked because they are supply chain. That's why I will turn the table to David. David, what do you think? What are some of the key measures and standards that should be adopted in equipment testing?
You make a good point, and I have to claim that NESIS is not all things to all people. So just to put that out there, but it does, it's a first step on network equipment for mobile operators. But in addition, if you trawl through our website, you can find IoT security measures. So for example, IoT security for the devices, the devices that go inside the cars or the houses or whatever that you're measuring, and also the platform providers, security measures for them, and also for the mobile operator. So there's 3 different layers in that security. Again, that's something we never had to worry about before. And just to make one point, the mobile operators are sort of uniquely placed in having to do this because really no other company has to deal with unsecure devices in the hands of people that they have no physical control over, but can access the network. And so the specifications associated with the mobile and the SIM card and the security that goes into the SIM card has been well defined for years. And so you buy a phone, you're buying into the standards. But again, the world is what I've been observing over the last few years is the galaxy of ICT and telecoms are colliding, and the telecoms people are using ICT technology like cloud and so on. And this is all different than just a few years ago. So we're all having to up our game.
So David, can you introduce the progress of the NISA standards in the EU Cybersecurity Act?
Yes, it's going ahead. The EU Cybersecurity Act is going to include NESIS as a sort of a benchmark for mobile operators. I'm not familiar with the EU. I live in Hong Kong, so I don't take to do that. But certainly, from what I understand, it's gaining, traction with part of the EU. It is going to be embedded into the EU requirements. So
that's good. Yeah, that's good. Mr. Sell, what are the recommended initiatives or measures for ensuring continuous network security?
Continuous network security. First, again, I'm really a promoter of training. First and foremost, I'm really a promoter of training. So if a company would be serious in ensuring that everything has to be in place, it has to be the personnel, the people inside it, and those who are responsible for it are well trained. So first and foremost, if we get this training, if we get proper training, then everything else would follow. I mean, at least easily or better than if we have all the networks in place and the people are not trained. It's going to be a disaster. And it's going to be the weakest link. In any organization, the weakest link would be the users normally. And normally it's not really the infrastructure, but the people using the infrastructure would be our weakest link. And therefore, let's strengthen it.
I agree with you. That is why the fourth key imperative of the National Cybersecurity Plan is the protection of individuals and training. And that is training, capacity building, capability building. When we started cybersecurity in the Philippines in 2016, with the launching of the National Cybersecurity Plan, we only had a couple of personnel. Mr. Sel knows that, But with constant training, with awareness, education, even integration of the cybersecurity into the curriculum, into the academic sector, it will help a lot to build the pool of experts and global knowledge, which Ms. Michelle is handling, is very, very relevant in the development of capacity building in the Philippines. Thank you, Mr. Sel, for that answer. Anyways, do you have any questions there from the audience? Okay, there's one question. Any one of you can answer this, but the question I believe is addressed to DICT. I'm not anymore with the DICT, but I think does DICT has a roadmap on establishing a unified cybersecurity standard? Which countries has established their unified IT security standard? Was there a study on how those countries have benefited from the unified IT security standards? So maybe one of you can answer this. Just remove the DICT from the question.
May I answer that, sir?
Please.
Yeah. From my knowledge, at least because SGS is a global company, so we also operate in other territories, in other countries. It's not really at that level that you have a unified cybersecurity standard practice on a national level. At best, there is like a preferred standard followed by a specific industry. Okay, so in that industry, this is, by default, the preferred standard that is used in either InfoSec or cybersecurity. So a good example of that is in the banking industry, specifically in the area of debit and credit cards. The preferred standard that's being followed is PCI DSS.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be an example of, how high a standard is actually practiced by a certain subset of the population or a certain subset of a country or territory. But to our knowledge, no standard has yet to achieve like a national level acceptance as the abiding standard for cybersecurity or information security. Again, it has to do with the nuances of each organization. I mean, one will work for this organization, but not necessarily work the same way for another organization or for a different industry for that matter.
Yeah, correct. So, I read an article that says the Philippines has not adopted standards. I mean, the adoption of standards in the Philippines is very low. That is why our situation is like this. That's why, we are pushing for the adoption of standards, for uniformity and to interoperability with and security, with other countries, and manufacturers as well. So if there are no more questions, I believe, can you give at least your last can you give us a message, or can you leave a message for us? I think let's start with Roselle. Ladies first. Nakamute ka, Roselle.
Again, sorry. For my future recommendation, let's ensure that these standards are suitable for the targeted industry facilities, provide education and workshops about these standards and the necessary IT skills to implement it. We also have to develop ethical rules that will apply to sensitive data, consult stakeholders about the standards, hire cybersecurity professionals, and assess previous data leaks. So with these in mind, I think these are the recommendations that we have to put in place anytime soon, because I think we have a backlog, a lot of backlogs. And take note, we've been in the industry, we've been in the training industry of cybersecurity and training for the past 18 years. And that means we're just starting. I mean, we could have started 18 years ago, but that's fast. So we have to move a little faster because, again, as mentioned earlier, the hackers are there. They have the equipment, they have the talent, they have the skills, they have the money, the resources, and they have the motives. So we have to act fast.
Correct. Thank you, Roselle. Thank you. Ben?
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to take off from Roselle, since I'm also coming from a training company, so to speak. I do agree with her. Hackers are there. The actors that are going to exploit our weakness is just waiting for the opportunity to do so. The thing that I have experienced in my years of teaching for SGS for these standards is that two things about our country and our culture. There's a good number of our people who has a love of learning. They like to learn new things. Okay, our parents will, break their backs literally just to send us to school for us to learn the things that we need to do to make a life for ourselves, which works for us. So that means with the hackers in play, we just simply have to outlearn them. Okay, we simply have to outlearn them. Okay, and secondly, when it comes to the standards, I'd like to give this message out to, especially not just my clients, but to anybody who's interested. The standard is not just something that looks good on paper, something that you use as a marketing tool that, yay, we're ISO certified for this standard, for that standard. I mean, it's only as good as the paper it's written on. If you don't practice it, it's only good, looks good on paper. But the standard was meant to give you guidelines, give you better ways of doing things, ways that are either accepted in your industry, accepted in your country, or even accepted globally. So if we want to participate in, Industry 4.0, in the Internet of Things, the standards gives us a boost up to participate in that, in that direction. All right. So having said that, treat it as a project. Treat it as something that is worth investing in. Treat it as something that's worth putting time, money, effort, and people into it. We're all going to be a beneficiary of it. Not just your company, not just your organization, not just your industry. Everybody can benefit from it.
I agree with you, Ben. Yeah. Security is like an insurance. You don't know when it happened. it will happen. So, but at least you have the insurance, the car insurance, for example. Please, David.
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth about it being insurance. I think was it someone in the US said there's the companies who know they've been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked yet. There's the two types. Hopefully it's not that bad yet. And as I say, mobile companies, mobile operators are uniquely placed because they have millions of devices that they are not in control of, and so the security was built in by design. And I think this is the key thing. And coming out with what Roselle has said, you can't just add training on after you've built the network. You need to sort of know what you're doing as you do it, and then that will make things more secure. And I think this is the way forward, is to build the competence and the capacity of the people as you build out the networks and not just networks, the IT infrastructure that we're talking about. So I think with that, I'll hand back to you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, David, for that comment. So anyways, guys, cybersecurity standard, adoption of cybersecurity standard is very, very important. And thank you to our panelists for their ideas, for sharing their knowledge to us. You know, if we adopt certain standards in the Philippines, Philippine NISAs or ISO or whatever standards that can contribute to our cybersecurity in the Philippines, then let's do it. Whether it is voluntary or mandatory, you know, we don't need to say it's mandatory or it's voluntary. The TC60 is there to help review, to help assess. With, of course, the TC60 has its members as well. You know, the ICT is there, the TTI, Bureau of Philippine Standards is there, the NTC, I believe, is there also. The the National Privacy Commission is there. So we can, you know, it's a whole of government approach. We are in a network governance right now. So, guys, thank you so much for sharing again. Floor, if may question pa, then just email it to Floor if you have more questions. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our moderator for taking time to be with us today. Actually, he has another event going on, but he has given us priority. So thank you very much, Engineer Cabanlong. And we'd like to thank our heartfelt thanks to our panelists today, Mr. David Turkington, also Mr. Benedict de Borja, and Ms. Roselle Reig. Please stay online. Please, as we present to you the Certificate of Appreciation from the Department of Information and Communications Technology, may I call on Dr. Thelma Villamorel, the Division Chief of the Critical Infrastructure and Critical Infrastructure Evaluation and Cybersecurity Standards Monitoring Division. That's quite a mouthful, I'm sorry. Of the Cybersecurity Bureau of the Department of Information and Communications Technology. Dr. Thelma, please.
Thank you very much.
Tel, naka-mute ka, Tel.
As part of the National Cybersecurity Month 2021 celebration. Thank you, signed by Jose Carlos Pirez, our Director for Cybersecurity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
The last one, but not the least, is Certificate of Appreciation to Ms. Roselle Reig for being the panelist in the Unified Cybersecurity Standards, Reducing Risk in the Supply Chain of the Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference with the theme of 2021 Onward Cybersecurity as the North, conducted by the DICT Cybersecurity Bureau, part of the National Cybersecurity Month Celebration 2021, given its day, 27th day of October in the year of our Lord, signed by our director, Jose Carlos P. Reyes. Thank you, Ma'am Roselle.
Thank you very much po.
Thank you very much once again. And I guess this is not the end of our partnership, as the DICT cybersecurity goes full blast on working on the adoption of the Philippines of standards, cybersecurity standards. So I hope we would still be welcome, Mr. Turkington, Mr. Deborah, and Ms. Ray.
Certainly, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. But before we go to our next speaker, I'll be giving us a 15-minute break. And we'll be back at 2:45. Actually, it's 14-minute break. We'll be back at 2:45, and we'll see you then, everyone.
Thank you.
Comment.
Thank you, Engineer Cabanlong. Thank you. Dr. Chan.
Yes, hi Flora, how are you?
Hi, thank you. Dr. Chan, would you want to check if your sharing is okay?
Sure, yes, that'd be great. Okay, looks good. Can you see it, Flora, or no?
No, we can't see it yet.
Oh, can you see it?
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, see you at 2:45.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome back. We are now on the second part of our day 2 of the Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference 2021. As we are talking about protecting business and supply chain, we cannot really dispense with the topic of digital economy. In fact, when the Department of Information and Communications Technology commemorated our 5th anniversary last June 2021, we also launched the CHIP conceptual framework. CHIP, which stands for Connect, Harness, Innovate, and Protect, aims to improve the Philippines' readiness for full and inclusive participation in the global digital economy and as a driver of digital transformation. So this brings us to our topic today, which is mitigating the risk in the digital economy. Please give me it is an honor for me to introduce our very special guest today who talked about mitigating the risk in the digital economy. Let me introduce to you Dr. Steve Chan. He currently serves as a chief scientist and smart grid cyber advisor for USAID's Energy Secure Philippines, and had previously served as chief architect for a USAID B Leaders Grid Resilience Engineering project in the Philippines. He has also served as a chief architect and special advisor for various grid resiliency projects and task forces throughout the ASEAN. His work has focused upon high voltage engineering, substation automation, strategic critical infrastructure communications, and industrial control system cybersecurity. Dr. Chan is a smart grid data scientist and inventor with granted international and US electrical grid-related patents. He served as a reviewer for 22 peer-reviewed journals, which include 3 journals from IEEE IET and conference proceedings related to energy, cyber, and resiliency. He was first author for the Internet of Things chapter of the 150th anniversary edition annual publication on statistics measuring the Information Society report produced by the International Telecommunications Union, or ITU, of the United Nations. Other publications include chapters within and among other books, the Springer book series, Advances in Intelligent Systems, as well as computing and lecture notes in network and systems. He has authored papers for various IEEE conference proceedings, such as the IEEE International Conference on Distributed Computing Systems, IEEE International Conference on Condition Monitoring and Diagnosis, IEEE Computing and Communication Workshop and Conference, and a lot more. And Dr. Chan's recent field work at the nexus of 3 sectors: the artificial intelligence facilitated multi-resolution aberration source location detection and classification, AI facilitated time-synchronized correlation and diagnosis, and large-scale systems design, computing, and cybersecurity has led to the advancement of cyber defense tools and techniques through various technology readiness levels for the energy sector's smart grid. Okay, that's quite a lot. And to talk about mitigating the risk in the digital economy, we are very fortunate to have with us Dr. Steve Chan. Dr. Chan, you may have the floor.
Thank you so much, Flor. If you can enable my sharing. Okay. Video sharing. Okay. So good morning to the audience and to the esteemed members of the Department of Information and Communications Technology Cybersecurity Bureau. It's an absolute privilege and honor to be here today. The topic of my talk will focus on mitigating risks in the digital economy. I will endeavor to address this year's theme of cyber threats becoming more sophisticated and attacks on critical sectors happening more frequently due to advances in technology. I would like to take the opportunity to review the outline of the talk for today. First, I would like to review the key strategic imperatives of the Philippines National Cybersecurity Plan, or NCSP. Second, I would like to introduce the key objectives of USAID's Energy Secure Philippines, or ESP. Two thematics should emerge from the NCSP and ESP review. There is a commonality of purpose, particularly in the area of cyber resiliency, such as for one, industrial control systems, or ICS for electric power, and two, industrial Internet of Things, or IIoT for communications, including how it supports ICS. As a footnote, our work for ICS has broader implications beyond energy. For example, without energy, water pumps may shut off. If water pumps are shut off, wastewater discharge may ensue. Over the course of the talk, hopefully, it will be evident how USAID ESP's sub-objectives align with NCSP's imperatives. Closing remarks will underscore the fact that cyber resiliency efforts toward ICS and IoT can help mitigate risks in the digital economy. Here's a very basic depiction of an industrial control system, or ICS. Generally speaking, it is divided into one, supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA, and two, production network. On the SCADA side, it is subdivided into a SCADA server and supervisory console. On the production network side, it is subdivided into a remote terminal unit, or RTU, programmable logic controller, or PLC, and industrial wireless network. The industrial wireless network may connect many elements within the industrial Internet of Things. These can range from autonomous vehicles, sensors at charging stations, renewable energy sources, mobile devices, and sensors at electrical power grid substations. At its core, the Philippines National Cybersecurity Plan, or NCSP, has four key strategic imperatives. Objective 1, protection of government and military networks. Objective 2, protection of businesses supply chain. Objective 3, protection of critical information infrastructure, or CII. Objective 4, protection of individuals. We note that Objective 1 and 2 are profoundly impacted by any compromise to their ICS for electric power, water, wastewater, etc. Likewise, we note that Objectives 3 and 4 are both impacted by any compromise as pertains to IIoT and/or the encompassing IoT in communications. Interestingly, USAID's Energy Secure Philippines, or ESP, lends well to the NCSP's key strategic imperatives. Two of ESP's principal objectives are to, one, improve electric utility performance, and two, increase deployment of advanced energy sources and systems. In fulfillment of these principal objectives, our team has been focused upon various sub-objectives, increasing resilience for the power grid, providing insights to inform and breathe life and to improve policies for the power grid, facilitating planning for greater efficiencies, opportunities, and security for the power grid, and working with local partners for joint capacity building for enhanced and more resilient grid. To summarize, we have been focused upon cyber resiliency. As you can see, USAID ESP sub-objective 1.3 nicely supports NCSP's objectives 1 and 2. Similarly, USAID ESP sub-objective 2.2 nicely supports NCSP objectives 3 and 4. I've placed the theme of ICS for electric power, water, wastewater with the cluster of objective 1 and 2. I've placed the theme of IIoT for communications with the cluster of objective 3 and 4. Hence, ICS and IIoT will be the two thematics which we will be discussing today. So onwards to thematic 1, covering Objective 1, protection of government and military networks, and Objective 2, protection of business and supply chain. Looking back at the first part of 2021, the statistics for Q1 and Q2 are quite interesting. First, there was a 40% increase in industrial control system, or ICS vulnerabilities disclosed. Second, approximately 33% of the global ICS were attacked. Third, and perhaps the most pertinent to our conversation today, about 61% of the global ICS attacks were focused on Southeast Asia, such as various ASEAN member states. Returning back to our very basic depiction of an ICS, we now show where the RTU and PLC reside. Within the switchgear, which are electrical disconnect switches, fuses, or circuit breakers used to control, protect, and isolate electrical equipment. Taking a closer look at these switchgear in context, we can see various components. The RTU is, in essence, conjoined with a breaker intelligent electronic device, or ID, which is a microprocessor-based controller of power system equipment. The RTU transmits data to the central processing module, or CPM, of the supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA system, and receives messages from the CPM for control actions. The SCADA system monitors and controls various devices at the substation. The Bay Control Unit, or BU, provides fully automated control of the substation switching devices. The Global Positioning System, or GPS clock, serves as a timing source for the entire substation. The GPS substation clock unit typically resides within the cabinet closest to us. So let's take a look at these switchgear as they reside inside a substation. So proceeding through the substation, taking a look at the substation from the outside. And that was a quick tour, both the inside and outside of the substation. And now allow me to introduce some substation quote unquote compliance considerations. Among other exemplar universally acknowledged standards for compliance in the electric power community, there is the International Electrotechnical Commission's IEC 61850. In essence, it is an international standard among many which delineate the communication protocols for intelligent electronic devices of substations. The older non-IEC 61850 compliant substations are typically characterized by more legacy operational technology, classic information technology vulnerabilities, and tend to track more conventional capabilities. Some of the prototypical vulnerabilities are shown in red. You can see that the breaker IED RTU is among the potentially vulnerable components at the substation. Beyond the RTU, with the progression to the exemplar standard of IEC 61850, equipment has become smarter, more connected, and more capable. Increasingly, operational technology, or OT, has leveraged the capabilities of information technology, or IT. Of course, these capabilities at the OT-IT nexus are accompanied by a new class of vulnerabilities infused throughout the encompassing information communications technology, or ICT, and industrial control system, or ICS, ecosystem. Ironically, when comparing the vulnerabilities in red on this slide to the previous slide, there are sometimes more attack vectors plaguing the IEC 61850 compliant substations than the non-IEC 61850 compliant substations. The Philippine Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT Cybersecurity Plan 2022, will be very helpful in exploring these areas as it aims to elevate Philippine cybersecurity capabilities and skill sets to international standards and benchmarks that involved OT, IT, ICT, ICS equipment to ensure compliance with those standards. Now, while it is absolutely critical to pay close attention to the myriad of international standards, there are yet other concerning, sophisticated cyber issues to contend with. The collective vulnerabilities of the substation need to be considered within the greater whole. As can be seen, the substation that we have been discussing is just one of many, which comprise a power grid network. For these many substations, even if a substantive portion of OT, IT, ICT, ICS equipment were benchmarked and met international standards, there still remains the issue of sophisticated targeted attacks. As just one example, a US Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, study from 2013 has shown that 30 US substations play a pivotal role in the power grid, and disabling just 9 of them could potentially bring down the entire US grid. Among other governmental groups, the Philippine Senate Committee on Energy has posed a similar question regarding the Philippine grid. We start to take a look at the nodes of NCSP's Objective 1, Government and Military Networks, and Objective 2, Business and Supply Chain. We started with the government installations. On the business supply chain front, we started to take a look at airports, ports, special economic zones, or SEZs, and the aggregate of airports, ports, and SEZs. In other words, a sampling of the quote-unquote business front. From a cyber resiliency engineering perspective, we started to take a look at the nodes a different way. Here, the government installations are denoted by the green nodes. Here, the airports are denoted by the orange nodes. Here, the ports are denoted by the blue nodes. Here, the SEZs are denoted by the purple nodes. And the electronic sector, as just one example, is denoted by the violet connectors. Now, a focus of our USAID ESP cyber activity, among others, so as to meet our various sub-objectives, is to help ensure and facilitate the digital economy and national economic growth. Taking just one economic growth example, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, approximately 62.4% of the total Philippine exports involve electronic products and other electronics. 58.2% of this figure includes electronic products, including semiconductor components devices, and 4.2% includes all other electronics. The substantive portion of the 58.2% are located in industrial parks and special economic zones, or SEZs. What if a key power grid node were targeted that supplied key industrial parks, SEZs, and ports? There are case studies which show that power outages at semiconductor plants caused more than USD 43 million in losses in one case, and more than USD 270 million in another case. To break that down further, a power outage of only 1 to 2 minutes caused almost USD 26 million in losses. Another power outage of only 28 minutes caused a reference USD 43 million in losses. According to the World Bank, the Philippine exports of goods and services as a percentage of GDP was reported at 25.2% in 2020. Taking 62.4% of this 25.2%, that means that up to 15.7% of the Philippine GDP could potentially be affected by power outages impacting the production sites of the electronic products / other electronic sector. Our principal focus will be to better understand these key node vulnerabilities. Importantly, oftentimes, key nodes are targeted even before the defenders realize that they are key nodes. In many cases, the involved cyber advanced persistent threats, or APTs, are ongoing and constitute non-traditional sophisticated cyber threats. Suffice it to say, examining these non-traditional sophisticated cyber threats at key nodes might be prudent for ensuring and facilitating a digital economy. Let's take one such example. Here we have a figure with some equipment performing a notional analysis at our favorite yellow substation. In this case, the figure with some equipment is endeavoring to discern the amount of electromagnetic interference and other matters at our favorite yellow substation. Following on the issue of electromagnetic interference, here's a graph from one of the sensors mapped against the timing derived from the GPS substation clock referenced earlier. Now, the actual idealized time is shown as a perfect diagonal line, as it should be without electromagnetic interference or other spurious emissions. Here we can see the measurement data mapped against time with some expected electromagnetic interference being exhibited for the time measurements of sensor 1. Here we can see the measurement data mapped against time with some expected electromagnetic interference being exhibited for the timing measurements of sensor 2, sensor 3, sensor 4. Here we can see the measurement data mapped for all sensors 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here we can see the measurement data mapped against time with an unusual graph being delineated regarding the timing measurements for sensor 1. The anomalous time is in yellow, while the normal time is in lavender. Here, for sensor 2, the anomalous time is in yellow, while the normal time is in violet. Here, the anomalous time is in yellow, while the normal time is in blue. Here, the anomalous time is in yellow, while the normal time is in orange. Now, we take all 4 sensors. So we can see the measurement data mapped against time with an unusual graph being delineated regarding time measurements for sensors 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there seems to be commonalities in the anomalous time, as indicated by the red circles and arrows. And we refer to this particular aberration commonality as a cyber motif. Now, for our team, the cyber and energy journey over the years has been a humbling one, and we have endeavored to discern particular cyber motifs throughout the ASEAN, in conjunction with our host countries' experts, such as at key terminal substations, as well as key upstream substations, supplying power to airports, ports, industrial parks, and special economic zones, all key elements of both national and regional economic growth. Along this vein, it might be prudent to see if certain cyber motifs are evident at certain key nodes, particularly those vital to the Philippines' digital economy. Here's a sampling of some key nodes for Luzon. They are in bright red. Here, a sampling of key nodes for Visayas are shown in brick red. The Luzon key nodes are in bright red. Here, a sampling of key nodes for Mindanao are shown in orange. The Luzon key nodes are in bright red, and the Visayas key nodes are in brick red. Now, there have been many lessons learned for our team. For example, in an examination of the vulnerabilities for a particular area of critical information, an examination of various potentially vulnerable nodes was conducted. And with the support of the host country, the positive nodes were carefully examined by our blue and red teams in accordance with international and ASEAN energy cyber standards, as exemplified by the blue and green boxes, among others. However, the originally positive nodes proved not to be the ones of interest. Fortunately, our green team had already proceeded to examine an alternate positive route, which actually contained the key nodes. Hopefully, the brief ICS cyber resiliency journey that we just took provides some insight into how our sub-objective 1.3 might be of service to NCSP objectives 1 and 2. So onwards to thematic 3, covering objective 3, protection of critical information infrastructure, CII, and objective 4, protection of individuals. So looking back, the statistics for the COVID time period are quite interesting. First, there was a 700% increase in IoT, including IIoT, malware attacks during COVID. Second, approximately 50% of IoT devices, including IIoT, were vulnerable to severe attack. Third, and perhaps the most pertinent to our conversation today, according to CSO and the Alliance Risk Barometer, Some of the biggest data breaches have been in Southeast Asia. Suffice to say, IIoT vulnerabilities abound, which can have a profound impact on the NCSP's Objective 3, protection of critical information infrastructure, and Objective 4, protection of individuals. Example, critical information relayed for telehealth during COVID, e-banking during COVID, etc. Accordingly, we take a look at some infrastructure which might support cellular, Wi-Fi, and certain 5G bands. So we'll take a look at a sample neighborhood, which of course requires communications coverage. So here's a parcel. Here are some notional towers positioned on the parcel. And we'll take a quick tour around this parcel and see nice neighborhoods and houses all around with foliage. A great deal of time is spent planning where to place towers to provide optimal quality of service. This can be loosely translated into good cellular signal, good Wi-Fi, etc. Here, we're taking a look at signal strength by distance from the tower. Here, we can see that there's a neighborhood in the red circle with relatively poor coverage, thereby affecting the quality of service. Accordingly, we consider placing a tower in a location with a small circle. While it might be optimal to place a tower in the center of the neighborhood, as shown, the neighborhood residents were against the tower being placed there for aesthetic and other reasons. The use of certain 5G technologies, such as millimeter wave, are delineated by the violet lines. As a recital fact, millimeter wave is constrained by shorter distances and is somewhat obstructed by many materials, like the housing materials themselves. So planning and tests are conducted as shown by the line. So 31 means millimeter wave, the signal will attempt to pass through 31 houses, and how does it perform? 21 houses, and how does it perform? 32, 27, 33, 18, 37, and all of them, you can see here. And this is the aggregate. So suffice it to say, providing quality of service for individual mobile phones, tablets, laptops, etc., is challenging enough. Signal boosters, repeaters, extenders are key to this quality of service. Yet these signal boosters, repeaters, extenders are vulnerable, particularly on the software front. So on the software front, let's discuss an interesting example. The family of Fourier transfer functions are key for determining handling waveforms. And FFT stands for fast Fourier transform, IFFT, inverse fast Fourier transform, etc. In essence, on the left, the family of Fourier transform functions are listed. On the right, various machine learning libraries and toolkits are listed. In between are various bugs or technical issues that have existed at one point or another over the past several years. And as we all know, software bugs are a fact of life, but attackers are very savvy and agile at exploitation. And as we had discussed, providing quality of service is challenging enough with unintentional and other types of spurious interference. Discerning between valid waveforms and invalid waveforms, AKA mimics, is just tough. Attackers know this, and they have endeavored to exploit this deficiency. So here we can see the technical issues affected PyTorch implementations with regards to the delineated waveform handling functions, affecting TensorFlow implementations, Caffe2, and other implementations like SciPy and Julia. In essence, these implementation issues, as just one simple example among many, including many other related issues, have a profound impact on everything we have discussed today, which include ICS and IoT. Hopefully, the brief IIoT cyber resiliency journey that we just took provides some insight into how our sub-objective 1.3 might be of service to NCSP objectives 3 and 4. And now for closing remarks. The anticipated outcome for our USAID ESP activity will be to facilitate the enhancement of cyber resiliency in the power sector, particularly in the area of non-traditional sophisticated cyber threats. Our approach is quite simple. Our core USAID ESP objectives of insights, improved procedures, greater capacity, and enhanced resiliency, plus our studied key motifs in the ASEAN, plus our application of advanced discernment and systemic analysis, plus our vantage point of digital transformation, example, Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0, 5G, beyond 5G, 6G, industrial Internet of Things within the broader rubric of the Internet of Things or IoT, the myriad of international standards and benchmarks, et cetera, should collectively, hopefully, equal robust support for the continued and ongoing Philippine progress in connectivity, interoperability, capability, transformation, and ensuing national economic growth. Thank you, and mabuhay. Hello?
Hi, Dr. Chan. Can you turn on your
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
Floor, it was disabled before, so that's why I didn't turn it on before.
Okay, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. Let me just see some questions from the floor. Our first question is, can you give us an example about cyber risk or threats to OT and IoT in the Philippines or APAC industries, and how can we go about the risk or threats?
Sure. So in the presentation, I showed some of the, for example, some of the ports, electronics industries, and I used some of the statistics of how much the electronics, electrical industries have impacted the GDP. So for example, those key substations providing energy to the electrical factories, those substations providing power to the ports, which have to move the containers, those would all impact, those would definitely qualify for keynote analysis and definitely should be looked at in terms of cyber vulnerabilities.
Okay, another question is, can you share your thoughts on the importance of threat hunting? I think this is this might not be really relevant with the presentation that you have, but we'd want your thoughts on the importance of threat hunting and intelligence and collaboration activity as part of cybersecurity strategies.
Okay, sure. And Floor, you said, and the very first sentence you said was the importance of, can you just repeat that?
The thoughts on the importance of threat hunting and intelligence and collaboration activity. Yes. Understood.
Understood. Yes, there is an interesting line between passive defense and active defense. In terms of threat hunting, we can definitely scan a variety of things. For example, one of the interesting facets is, as a cyber defender, we're constantly looking at what vulnerabilities are released all the time. And the manufacturers might inform, and we might find them on the National Vulnerability Database or portals such as offered by CISA or any other of the certs. Now, ironically, those vulnerabilities can also be used as attack accelerants. So in a way, we have to be quite diligent about looking at those vulnerabilities and obviously patching as quickly as we can, which means that it's always an ongoing and seemingly never-ending task.
Thank you for the answer. Let me just check some more questions. It says here that you've already worked in the Philippines setting for quite some time. So here in the Philippines, what have you seen are the primary threats in our digital e-commerce from which we are at risk? And what are, on the part of USAID, what initiatives are being undertaken to mitigate, in your idea, what are the initiatives that should be undertaken to mitigate this risk?
Well, thank you for your comments. I've definitely had the privilege and honor of taking on some projects in the Philippines. And of course, they're always a humbling experience and very educational for me as well. From what I have seen is that everyone around the world is obviously trying to enhance the resiliency and further the adherence to standards. And I think that resilience compliance plans, which was implemented years ago, a lot of things are already being done. So now it's just a moment of acceleration. And the acceleration might have to occur at this kind of nexus where it's still the wild, wild west. And that nexus is kind of right at the intersection of traditional operational technologies, which is the older legacy equipment, and the capabilities of information technology. And where they meet is a really interesting sector, which I think we should look at more persistently, aggressively, etc.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. I think that's also one area that we should really focus on, especially here in the Philippines, as we try to strengthen our cybersecurity policies and cybersecurity stance. And okay, so I don't see any more questions on the floor. I think there is. Let me check. Oh, okay. There's one. ICS systems often use legacy systems, but it can't be upgraded or changed drastically because of its cost implications. So how do we balance the cybersecurity and business slash commercial viability?
Interestingly, I mean, that's a fantastic point. And ironically, sometimes as the upgrades do occur, as I pointed out in the presentation, sometimes as we actually comply more and we upgrade equipment and the equipment becomes more capable, we have to look at defending more against more vulnerabilities. So obviously the cost benefit analysis is quite complex. So for example, I would say certain key areas that are pertinent for the economy, those definitely warrant close scrutinization. And maybe, if the advancements are made in those areas, definitely, like the previous panelists already discussed, definitely trying to adhere to the various standards. Mm-hmm.
So when do security issues in consumer space become a threat to critical infrastructure, and what can we do to lessen or eliminate the impact, especially in the electrical industries and energy?
Sure. So let me just make sure I understand the question. The kind of pervasiveness, when you say the customer, you're saying that data is being transmitted back and forth, there's more vulnerabilities, or, it's fascinating. When we take a look at alerting or warning systems for a lot of the power grid sector, sometimes there are alerting systems and sometimes it goes to cell phones, different electronic devices, tablets, etc. So personal consumer products are actually ironically linked in to the alerting and warning system of traditional industrial systems. And whether that traffic can be blocked, intercepted, manipulated, and what we can classically call as a replay attack. Replay attack would be, for example, it's the classic situation where in a movie, you have a video camera, and then they loop the same video over and over. So you don't even know someone's in a room because it looks like an empty room. That situation can definitely happen in the power industry as well for various replay attacks, where we have readings and the readings all read normal and all read the same. But in actuality, things are happening under the surface.
Oh, okay. And I think this is our last question. What sustainable initiatives do you think should be done by the government to promote and measure the cybersecurity awareness in critical information infrastructure and the infrastructure sectors as a whole?
Actually, I was quite impressed with the imperatives that have been put forth under the National Cybersecurity Plan, because I found that the USAID ESP subject is actually blended quite nicely. I think that efforts are already underway. When I was last in the Philippines prior to COVID, they were in the midst of formulating resiliency compliance plans. So I think efforts are underway. I think the folks there are doing a great job. The ICT is doing a great job. The Senate Committee on Energy is doing a great job. A lot of things have been raised, and I think unfortunately, COVID hit, and lots of things, we're all working differently. But I think things are progressing nicely. And even the conference venue today is quite nice. Thank you for the invitation as well.
And if I also add from the side of the DICT Cybersecurity Bureau, we have been working with different critical information infrastructure with the CII sectors. And we have been working with them so that they could create their own sectoral certs. Because we think that it's important, so that there would be a cert that there would be a cert that would be able to focus on these sectors, because we know that these sectors, that if they are attacked, it would have a massive impact, not just on the economy, but in the conveniences of the people as well of the country. So right now we have been meeting regularly in roundtable discussions these sectors that we have identified as critical in the country. So thank you so much, Dr. Chan, for. Okay, so, before we end, can we just ask you for some words before we end the session? As a closing.
Oh, closing statements?
Yes.
I would say that definitely the critical infrastructure and sometimes critical nodes, even strategic infrastructure, should definitely be analyzed in a more discerning fashion. So for example, with the entire country of Philippines, obviously we want to bring all the nodes, all the critical elements of a power grid up to a certain standard. But definitely the particular key nodes should be looked at carefully. And the reason they should be looked at carefully is because the attackers are also looking at what key nodes to take down. So those key nodes in particular, bring up to a certain standard or average will not be good enough. It must be raised higher.
Thank you very much for bringing your expertise with us here on the third day of our Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference, Dr. Chan. Please accept our appreciation with this certificate that is going to be presented by Dr. Thelma Villamorel, our Division Chief for the Critical Infrastructure Evaluation and Cybersecurity Standards Monitoring Division of the Cybersecurity Bureau. Dr. Thelma.
Hi, Dr. Steve.
Hello, how are you, ma'am?
Good, thank you. This certificate of appreciation is hereby given to Dr. Steve Chan for being a resource person of the Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference 2021 with the theme 2021 Onwards Cybersecurity as the Norm, conducted by the Department of Information and Communications Technology Cybersecurity Bureau as part of the National Cybersecurity Month 2021 celebration, given this day, 27th day of October in the year of our Lord 2021, signed by our director, Jose Carlos P. Reyes. Thank you, Dr. Chan.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the privilege and honor of speaking today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Dr. Chan, for being with us today and sharing your expertise on cybersecurity with us today. And I hope that our participants learned a lot today, and we still have a lot more to learn and to discuss next on the last day of our Philippine International Cybersecurity Conference, and that would be this Friday, October 29, 2021. And we would be discussing about protection of individuals. So we'll be discussing about the role of education in bridging the gap between the industry the industry and education in terms of cybersecurity. So we have invited scholars from within the country and also from our partners outside the country. And as well as we are going also to talk about the importance of awareness, cybersecurity awareness, and in making people safe and making people safe while they are online and while they use ICTs as well. So I guess we have to see you again on Friday, and please do monitor our cybersecurity page as DICT Cybersecurity Facebook page for updates, and we will be posting our we'll also be posting our the registration link for Friday this week. Okay, for our last day of the PICC 2021. Okay, so for requests for presentation, for the presentations that we have today, kindly scan the QR code that is on your screen, and you can send a request to us for the presentations using that link. Okay, so. Yeah. Also, by the way, Dr. Chan, would it be okay to ask from you if you would be open to sharing your presentation to our audience?
Sure, of course, Thank you.
Thank you so much. So everyone, please scan the QR code on your screen right now so you could request for the presentations that were presented today. by our panelists and our speaker. Okay, so we'd like to thank the following for making this day a successful event. We'd like to thank ISAP Quezon City, specifically Ms. Gemma Baisik, and we'd also like to thank the Office of the Undersecretary for Digital Philippines, of course, our directors and division chefs under the Cybersecurity Bureau. We also would want to thank our colleagues from CISMD, CertPH, and the Digital Certificate Division. We'd also like to thank GSOD for providing today's platform so we could successfully hold this conference. And we'd like also to thank GSMA Asia Pacific, SGS Philippines, the DTI BPS, and USAID ESP for providing the speakers for today. Thank you very much, and see you again on Friday, everyone. Bye.
Bye.